The Seattle Seahawks entered the 2023 season with high expectations as they won 9 games and surprised everyone as Geno Smith would throw for over 4,000 yards and 30 touchdown passes and would go on to win the Comeback Player of the Year award. They finished 9th in points per game and with a top 5 draft pick, thanks to the Russell Wilson trade, which sent Seattle the number 9 pick in 2022 and the number 5 pick in 2023, and with their own first round pick at number 20 overall. The expectations for Seattle entering this year were to win at least one playoff game, if not more. But as we enter week 18, they are on the outside looking in, and not only did they disappoint this year relative to those preseason expectations, but they are now in a very tough situation. What do they do moving forward? Is it time for a head coaching change? Who would replace Pete Carroll, who's been there since 2010 and is now 72 years old? I think everyone would agree that Seattle isn't a bad team, but I think everyone would also agree when we say they aren't a great or elite team either. And this is why the Seahawks are in a tough situation. Because what do they do moving forward? Well, we're going to try and answer that in today's video. Now let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing what one of Seattle's biggest problem is, and believe it or not, it's not Geno Smith being a one-year wonder. It's not Geno Smith having a less successful 2023 than 2022. In fact, it has nothing to do with Geno. The big, and I mean big, problem with the Seahawks is their run defense. I was excited for the Seahawks entering 2023 because I thought they could be a dark horse candidate to make noise in the playoffs, and if everything fell into place for them, meaning good matchups in the postseason, and if everything went their way, an NFC Championship game appearance wasn't out of the cards for them. I mean, think about it. This team won 9 games last year and had a resurgence year from a veteran quarterback and had 4 draft picks in the top 2 rounds of the 2023 draft. Not only that, but they spent a lot of money in free agency to try and improve their defense by adding guys like Draymond Jones, Jaron Reed, Bobby Wagner, and you get the point. I really thought heading into the year that improvement for this team was almost inevitable. The 2022 Seahawks finished 30th in rushing attempts allowed, 30th in rushing yards allowed, 27th in rushing touchdowns allowed, and 26th in yards per attempt. With the improvements they made and acquisitions they made, I thought it was almost impossible for them to be this bad for the second consecutive year, and even within this timeline, they traded for veteran defensive lineman Leonard Williams, who in theory should have helped the run defense, but it didn't. Unfortunately, the 2023 Seahawks have been ran on time and time again, and they ranked 28th in rushing attempts allowed, 30th in rushing yards allowed, 30th in rushing touchdowns allowed, and 25th in yards per attempt. They have allowed 100 yards rushing or less in just 5 of 16 games in 2023, and even in those games, games where you effectively take away a part of a team's game plan, that in theory should significantly help your team's chances of winning games, Seattle is just 2-3 when they hold teams to under 100 yards rushing. So even when they are doing a good job of this, they still weren't fully capitalizing, which is a problem. And if you were wondering, the teams they beat when they allowed 100 yards less or rushing in 2023, they were the Panthers, who will finish with the worst record in the league, and the Washington Commanders, who will have a top 5 draft pick and could finish with the second worst record in the league. I think that kind of summarizes the frustration of the 2023 season for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, there's been times for this team where it is flat out ugly, and they were against the elite of elite teams. They went to Baltimore with a 5-2 record, looking to challenge one of the most complete teams in the NFL in Week 9, and if they were lucky, maybe Baltimore would make a few mistakes and Seattle would fly back to the Evergreen State with a win and improve to 6-2. But as we know, that didn't happen, and in the process of a 37-3 loss, Seattle would allow a season-high 298 yards rushing, and the Ravens would flat out embarrass them. They played the San Francisco 49ers 3 times in 2022, and 3 times they would allow 170 yards rushing or more, and 3 times they would lose. With the improvements this team made this offseason, I was really looking forward to see how they would do, knowing how much fuel they had from last year's losses and how motivated this team would be to play against the 49ers in 2023. I would be extremely, and I mean extremely, surprised if we see them play a 3rd time this year, but in the 2 games they played, they allowed 169 yards rushing and 173 yards rushing and lost by double digits in each game. Now, this all plays into why the Seahawks are in a tough situation, because when you look at their salary cap hits for 2024, it's not pretty, and it's not a matter of cutting a player or 2, and all of a sudden, poof, we're fine, and we're back on track, and a Super Bowl title is in our future. I know Seahawks fans, rightfully so by the way, feel a certain way about Jamal Adams, a player they traded multiple first-round picks for a few off-seasons ago, and I get it. For anyone who doesn't know how bad Jamal has been for them in 2023, he has a missed tackle rate of 24.2%, which, yes, is as bad as that sounds. He misses a tackle on nearly a quarter of all of his tackle attempts. This is per PFF, by the way. It's not like he makes up for it either as a center field safety in that he takes parts of opposing teams' game plans away. When targeted in 2023, he has allowed an opposing quarterback passer rating of 122.1, and for reference, Aaron Rodgers threw 48 touchdowns to 5 interceptions in 2020, and his passer rating for the season was 121.5. So yes, Jamal is allowing worse than an MVP-winning quarterback's passer rating when being targeted this year. Jamal also signed a 4-year, $70 million contract, with 38 of that being guaranteed, and the problem for the Seahawks is Jamal has a dead cap hit of $20.8 million in 2024. He has a cap hit of $26.9 million in 2024, but the dead cap is what matters here because it is what is guaranteed. So in theory, yes, the Seahawks saved $6.1 million by cutting him, but at the cost of $20 million. Jamal has also been an extreme liability when he's played that there is no team that would sign up for his contract, combined with the player he is today and, actually trade for him. Seattle would effectively have to trade and will conservatively say Jamal and a 5th round pick for a 6th round pick in return just to get cap relief. This is also a big problem because when they traded for defensive lineman Leonard Williams this past October, they traded their 2024 2nd round pick and a 5th round pick in 2025. I'm not really factoring in the 5th round pick when discussing this, but the 2nd round pick is a problem. The Seahawks only have 7 picks in the 2024 draft, which is every pick they would normally have, minus the 2nd round pick, but adding Denver's 3rd from the Russ trade. Another big contract Seattle has that isn't friendly at all to them is veteran wide receiver Tyler Lockett. Lockett has been a good player for the Seahawks and is working on 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and unless he has a 177-yard outing in Week 18, which I will go ahead and predict he does not have, as that would be his first 100-yard game of the year, he will finish with less than 1,000 yards this year, and when you're past the 30-year-old mark like Lockett is, you are really on a year-by-year basis, especially as a receiver. Lockett's contract situation is almost identical to Jamal Adams, but instead of 20.8 of his $26 million next year, 19.8 of his is guaranteed. So again, Seattle could save $7 million by cutting Tyler Lockett at the cost of over $19 million. Paying Tyler Lockett and Jamal Adams a combined $40 million at minimum, because again, they could cut both, is a big problem for any team, and that's a big understatement. The Seahawks tried to make a push to go from an above-average team to a great team, and an example of that is the Jamal Adams trade. But it didn't work out, and now we are effectively back to square one. Not only are we back to square one, but it's been a few years since Pete Carroll's won a playoff game. The last playoff game they won was in 2019 against the Eagles, and this was the Jadeveon Clowney Carson Wentz game, where Seattle would go on to win 17-9 over a Josh McCown-led Eagles team. They are 0-3 in playoff games since then, and even before that game, their last playoff win was against the Matt Stafford-led Lions all the way back in 2016. So when you take a look at the Seahawks' past few years, with them going 12-4 in 2020 and losing to the Rams at home by double digits in the playoffs, then going 7-10 in 2021, then losing in the wildcard round in 2022, and now heavily underachieving in 2023, we are at a crossroads with the Seattle Seahawks. There's going to be a lot of questions this offseason, and a big one is Geno Smith the answer at quarterback? I think you can make a case either way and try to ride it out with Geno one more year, but with the way NFL franchises operate in today's NFL, I think they are going to look to replace Geno, whether that's his 2024 replacement or 2025 is of course to be determined, but the replacement for Geno is coming sooner than some people think. Having a team like the 49ers in your division is tough because you're almost always looking up to Big Brother and trying to figure out ways to beat them. For reference, the 49ers have won 5 games in a row against Seattle, and I know Seahawks fans would want this mentioned, as if it were my team, I sure as hell would too, but in the previous 17 games, Seattle was 15-2 against San Francisco. But the last time Seattle beat the Niners was in December of 2021. One of the worst places a team can be stuck in the NFL is in the 7-9 win range, because it's either glass half full or half empty, and a lot of the time, you'll see teams do a half-ass approach the ensuing offseason, basically shrug their shoulders and say, "We tried." But that's exactly where Seattle is. Since the start of the 2021 season, Seattle is 24-27 if you include the 49ers' loss in the postseason last year. They attempted to go all in last offseason and it failed in a pretty big way. They brought in seemingly countless new defensive players only to move up a single spot in points allowed per game, as they went from 25th in 2022 to 24th in 2023. They have a few ugly contracts on their roster, but unlike a lot of other teams, this team has a lot of good young talent. I know the results from Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet weren't what Seahawks fans wanted to see this year, as neither back will reach 1,000 total rushing yards, but I still think this team has potential in 2024 and beyond. To be competitive, that is, which is a lot different than winning a Super Bowl. I like Pete Carroll, but if you asked me if I thought this team would win a Super Bowl with him as their head coach again, I would answer no. Not maybe, but no. So with the projection of the future of the Seattle Seahawks, and given Pete is 72 years old, you have to think both a new head coach and new quarterback are inevitable. But that still doesn't solve the run defense problem. That still doesn't solve this team folding when it comes hell or high water to the best teams in the NFL and not losing 20-17 in a close, hard-fought game, but embarrassed multiple times by double digits. If there are any Seahawks fans that want mention that Drew Lock played in the Week 14 game against the 49ers and not Geno Smith, it doesn't matter when the defense gives up 527 yards of opposing offense, and CMC, Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle all have plays of 40 or more yards in one game. It doesn't help the Seahawks that the Rams took a big step forward this year and swept them, and that Seattle at best will go 2-4 in the division, with, you guessed it, 2 wins coming over a team that will finish with a top 5 draft pick. One thing that I worry about with Seattle moving forward is, for as much as we've dogged the run defense in this video, and for as many concerns I have with this team, they've done a good job of taking care of the football in 2023 offensively speaking. They are second in the NFL in fumbles lost, as they've only lost 5 all year, and they're 5th in turnovers. They only have 5 of 16 games where they've outright lost the turnover battle to the opponent, and actually have a +2 turnover margin on the year, which is in the upper half and is a sign of winning football. But this team, and this applies to a lot of other teams too that we will discuss in depth this offseason, but they don't have enough, and relative to other NFL teams this offseason, they have limited resources. This team is at a crossroads, and they're in a tough situation because I truly ask, what do you do moving forward? This isn't Madden where you can fleece teams for draft picks and get 3 first-round picks for a discount. This is the real NFL, and this is a situation I don't envy. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 35% of people watching are subscribed, and it helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.